Hello, beloveds. Welcome to the Amanda Collins podcast. It's my honor to help you awaken to joy, be your greatest self, and live a life you love. I'm Amanda Collins. Each week, I'll share tips, practices, and rituals to help you feel the storehouse of joy inside. I'll answer your questions and talk with thought leaders from around the world about health, wealth, love, conscious living, and parenting. Are you ready to live your most fulfilled life? Welcome to Awaken to Sistership, and I am so honored to have Tanya Lynn here today. She is a strategic activator, gifted at coaching women to soar to new heights by putting together a plan that maximizes their talents and strengths and taking bold, courageous actions to fulfill on their intentions. Tanya is the visionary CEO behind the international organization Sistership Circle, a worldwide sisterhood movement, empowering women to step into their true beauty, brilliance, and boldness as feminine leaders. She started training facilitators to use her proven 6-week circle program based on her best-selling book, Open Your Heart, How to Be a New Generation Feminine Leader. She's also the author of How to Lead Circle. She is a respected leader in the industry from clients and colleagues alike because she's the real deal, living and breathing her work. She believes that the new model of feminine leadership is not about hierarchies of power, but about circles of collaboration. For us to become true leaders, we must embrace our sisters as our allies and give one another permission to shine. And learn more about Tanya in Sistership Circle, and that information will be in the show notes. Welcome, Tanya. So happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you.
I just love Tanya. She is just magical and amazing and brilliant. And it's at least over a decade now that we know each other. Oh my goodness, I remember back in the day, you had me come speak on feng shui at one of your events. And I was just like, I just love this woman. She just walks her talk on every meaning of that word. So I am so honored to have you here today.
Thank you.
Well, would you just start off by just telling us, about your journey and from like as much as you'd like to share as to this moment of what you've created in your life.
Absolutely. Well, I grew up as my father's daughter, and I got this term from a book, The Heroine's Journey by Maureen Murdoch. And the idea of a father's daughter is a girl who grew up very much wanting to please her father and very much masculine, mission driven. And so that was me. Grew up as a tomboy, got really good grades, played sports. And then when it came time for me to get a job, it was like, okay, well, my dad wants me to be, one of the financial forecasters on TV, Maria Bartolome or whatever her last name is. And so I was like, okay, I could do something similar, right? So I moved to New York and was working in the financial world and sales. And so I very much was all about producing results and achievement oriented. And so when I found Maureen Murdoch's book that was describing the heroine's journey, I was like, oh my God, that was me. And there came a point when I was like, this is completely pointless, right? Like, what is the point of this? And I'm not happy. I'm not fulfilled. There's got to be something else out there. And so then I dove down the rabbit hole into personal development. And at the end of the day, realized that here in New York, I was never going to find the fulfillment that I was looking for. And I was so close with my family. And I was like, I'm a San Diego girl at heart. It's time to go back home and like really dig into my roots. So I go back to San Diego and I realized that I need to connect with like-minded women. And so I started putting on my very first events under the name of Women for Wellness. And then that morphed and changed into Tribal Truth. And 6 months into Tribal Truth, we started the very first Sistership Circle. And so we had this beautiful monthly membership. And one of the members came to us and said, "Hey, can we meet weekly?" And I said, "Sure." So that was the very first Sistership circle, was where we met weekly for 12 weeks. And what I didn't know at the time was that I had this underlying sisterhood wound and this deep feminine wound, and was completely disconnected from my feminine. And so from that point of starting that circle, it basically began my healing process around the feminine and around sisterhood. And there was a point actually when, because at the same time I was spreading tribal truth internationally, right? And I brought it up to San Francisco and New York and London, and I was doing it in all these different places as this membership model. And I remember showing up on a call with the leaders, and this must have been in, I think, 2011. And I remember showing up on the call crying, and I just felt like I couldn't lead. And normally when I was leading, it was very masculine driven. It was all about, what are you accountable for? What results are you producing? Right. And I show up on this call crying. And at the end of the call, the women are just like, "Oh my God, we feel so connected to you. You're real, and, and I was like, what? Scratching my head, like, but I'm a mess. How can you be saying any of this? Right. Like, I'm not leading. And so that really had me, it was kind of like a cracking point for me, where I started to crack open and started to learn how to be vulnerable and how to be real and to really soften into my feminine in terms of my leadership. And so fast forward, I'm going down this really dark night of the soul, letting go of all of that I thought I was, letting go of all this masculine conditioning, and gave up tribal truth, essentially, and came out of this process writing my book. And when I launched my book, I put together this my book was a curriculum, and I took a group of women through it. I beta tested it here in San Diego, and in the middle of it, I'm like, "Oh my God, this is Sistership Circle." So it's like I literally came full circle back to that original group that I started at the beginning, but now I had a curriculum, I had a proven structure. And so from that point, I then started training facilitators. And that was my original vision when I started Tribal Truth, was how do I have this be sustainable? And how do I have other women do what I'm doing? But I wasn't quite on the mark. So now that I had this structure and this curriculum, that's when I started training facilitators. And I've been doing that ever since. So my book came out in 2014. And so ever since then, for the past 3 years now, I've been training facilitators all around the world to essentially create and lead circles in their local communities and virtually.
That's so amazing. Thank you, for sharing your whole journey. So, I mean, you obviously do really believe that our work is our medicine. And
yes.
So do you witness this kind of transformation? Okay, here's the thing. When you see women, being attracted to the group, whether to lead or just to attend and everything, do you see women coming in that remind you of kind of yourself before you did all this softening and healing and reconnecting with your divine feminine? Is that something?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say a lot of women who come into Circle have a really hard time being vulnerable, are very disconnected from their feminine, and are afraid to be seen. And I think this is, our society. And the more that I dive into this, the more that I see that we have been conditioned as women to stay silent and to not be visible, and that it's just not okay to be a woman. It's better to be a man. And so there's so much shame around being a woman, and we're not even really conscious of that because it's just been so conditioned. And you see it in our media. It's just, it's been centuries of trying to suppress the feminine and not having women feel like it's okay to be a woman, like it's not powerful.
Mm-hmm. And it's so amazing with you because you talk about showing up for that call and you're crying. You're like, "What do you mean I'm not leading? I'm crying." And so I suppose I have a couple of questions. One is how did you kind of support yourself to get there? Because you said I did a lot of work on myself to do a lot of healing and going through the dark night of the soul and everything. Because it's just so empowering and so beautiful when I read your Facebook posts or your newsletters. Like, you are like raw to the core. You are authentic to the core. Something, it's like, and it's like you give us all permission just to play full out and to ask for help if we need it. And, it's not like bottling that down. So if you would share, like, how did you get there from that place?
Yeah, well, this is the best part of the story here that I missed out on. So I'm glad you brought it up. So it was the summer of 2013, and I had just gone through a breakup, and I was about to put on a retreat. And I basically met this woman who was going to come to my retreat, and she said to me, do you want to be a mother? And I was like, "Ooh, that's a topic I don't really want to get into." And, and so basically we got into the conversation. This guy who I just broke up with did not want to have children. And so I was in a big, I don't know. And she said, "If there's one thing I want you to get, it's that here I am at 50, and I married someone who was a no when I was an I don't know. And that's my biggest regret, is that I didn't get clear for myself.
I got
So
such
I
chills
want
there.
you to get clear." And I said, "Oh, yeah, I think I do." And as I said that, I felt myself completely contract. And it was just like, okay, yes, I'm making this declaration, and there is a lot there that's in the way. That week, I ended up seeing 2 different healers. The one did this beautiful hands-on healing session with me where we identified that what was in the way was that I had a lot of children die in my life. So when I was in kindergarten, one of my classmates was having seizures on the playground and ended up dying that year. And there was this numbness that I had experienced around it. And when I was in Japan, I had one of my students and one of my friends' kids die. Same numbness. And so there was this underlying fear that I can't bring a child in this world because I'm going to lose him or her. Mm-hmm. So we dealt with that piece. And then the other big piece was I didn't want to be like my mother. And my mother was an amazing mother. There was nothing wrong with that. But that she dedicated her life to only being a mother. So I had a limited belief that if I become a mother, then I can't do my work in the world. So that was huge. So I ended up working with the second healer who became my mentor for about 9 months. And he took me deep into this process of really going into what did I learn from my mother and my father, and healing my mother and father wound, and really getting into these limited beliefs that I had created for myself. And I had done, 10 years worth of work, but he said, you've done 10 years of work, but you haven't really gotten to the root of your suffering. Do you want to go to the root? And that's your mother and father wound. And I was like, yeah, sign me up. Like,
I mean, don't you believe to an extent it's pretty much for most of us, it really stems back. Yeah. It's like,
and
it's
so
your
it was
mother or father,
Yeah. So it was a really intense 9 months. And that was literally that month. I was like, I'm done with tribal truth. Ooh, whoever else is leading, and you're just, I'm done. So continue, change the name, whatever. I don't care. Like, I'm done with this. And so I just completely 100% committed to my healing process. And through that process, I wrote my book, because a lot was getting freed up. And right before I completed the process, the 9-month process, my husband showed up.
Mm-hmm.
And then
the 9-month birthing process,
yeah.
right?
And then 3 months later, we were pregnant, which was exactly a year after I started the process. So, it just goes to show that women who are wanting to get pregnant, it's so much of your limited beliefs that are blocking you. If you're having infertility problems, yes, there's absolutely things that could be going on with your body, but so much of it is psychosomatic. And I really believe that once you get really, really clear and you let go of a lot of these belief systems that you have, then you can get pregnant so fast.
Absolutely. I mean, you just hear so many cases of people that
yeah.
they do in vitro and then they end up getting pregnant. And then the second baby is like, oh my goodness, we're pregnant again, because that limiting belief is cleared because they've had a baby, and so second and a third or however many more they want. So
2 things. One is that actual process of doing my own work around mother and father wound and letting go of the illusion and getting to the truth of who I am. And so there was that whole process. And then on top of that was me allowing myself to be in a container of sisterhood where women were supporting me and I was learning how to receive love and support, and allowing myself to be seen amongst other women. So the combination of those 2 things, and I was probably doing other things as well, but I would say those were the top 2 things, is I being in circle and then going through this process for myself.
Well, you are amazing. And thank you for, just being brave enough to dig that deeply to free yourself. But then, I mean, look at that ripple effect. You're literally, just by embodying that, are helping all these women reconnect, remember to who they are through you doing it for yourself, first of all.
Yeah. And I mean, that's exactly it. At the end of the process, my mentor is like, you should be doing this work. So let me train you. So for a while we were co-leading and he was training me, and now I have integrated that process into my own facilitator training, because I truly believe that if you want to lead in the world, I mean, this was the missing piece for me. I had I can go build a business, but there was an incongruency and something that just felt off and misaligned. So when I was able to do that deeper work, I mean, that's how I'm able to like really show up in the world as the embodiment and as real and raw, and that people can really see that I am the real deal. It's because of that work. And so now actually training other women how to do that and how to really be the embodiment of the work that they're doing in the world by going to the deeper layer of level of self-healing.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
And, we're talking probably, a large percentage of your life that you were, as you were saying, kind of the more masculine energy was running the show. And so I would love to hear, are there days, are there times, like if it gets stressful or, that those old patterns start to come up where you are like, okay, oh my goodness, Tanya, I notice I'm coming more into my masculine, do you find that? And if you do, what are tools that you bring yourself back?
Well, this is a great question. And I just actually, I'm a contributing author to a women's empowerment book. That's a compilation of different authors. And this was exactly what I wrote about. And that should be coming out soon. And this really became clear for me in during this pregnancy that I'm currently in right now. And that is that it is about finding the balance and an integration of masculine and feminine. And how can my masculine serve my feminine? So I'm not about getting rid of my masculine. And I believe doing business in the feminine or feminine leadership is truly an integration. because without the masculine, then we're all over the place, right? Like the feminine is very much swirling and in the mystery, and just, I think she needs structure. She needs a container, and that's the masculine. And this is something that I teach a lot of in terms of holding circle is you need a timekeeper. You need to have like, some structure around your circle. That's what's going to make it really powerful. So the number one thing that I have found for myself that I've learned from a couple different women, one particular is Suzanne McQueen, and she has this wonderful book called 4 Seasons in 4 Weeks. And in 4 Seasons in 4 Weeks, she talks about syncing up your life with your cycle. And so before this pregnancy, I started doing that and like really mapping out my cycle and really starting to learn like, when should I push and when should I rest? And then coming into the pregnancy, was like, oh, so I can also look at my pregnancy as a cycle as well. And knowing what I know from my first pregnancy, it was, okay, first trimester is the time to rest. Second trimester is a time to push because I have the most energy. I'm at the peak in terms of energy and creativity, right? And then slow down again during third trimester. And so I've had probably some of the biggest business breakthroughs, the most success in my business during this pregnancy because I followed that cycle.
Mm-hmm. And don't you also think though these little souls, come with their own karma, their own abundance, their own, you hear people say I was pregnant and I got the house, or this career, this happened, or that. It's like they come in with all this like, their own destiny energy, and it's just kind of like this abundance,
Yeah, babies. And it's so funny because there's this idea that so many women entrepreneurs have of like, this baby's going to like ruin what I've created. It's like, no, actually babies are going to bring in like all kinds of amazing things for you and help you tighten everything up and get really clear and manifest all this stuff because that's what they need. Right.
Yeah.
So it was the exact same thing here of, I had to up level and do everything to bring a second child into this world. And so everything got systemized and structured and so much masculine, a lot provided by my husband who works with me. But I had a massive push and I was super busy and I was like full on in action, result oriented go mode during my second trimester. And so I was very much in my masculine, but there was so much that was also feminine. Right. And so it was a true integration. And then I was like, okay, time to slow down and rest and take it easy during third trimester. And I've been busy, but, it's been much more around, I've let go a lot of the structure and much more in flow and much more, priority is self-care. So that's the biggest thing is like understanding, like even in your monthly cycles that when you're ovulating, that's a great time to get out there and be visible and get stuff done,
Absolutely.
And then when you're having your period, like that is the time to just sink into the feminine, be in the unknown mystery of the feminine and rest and reflect and journal and not be doing anything, right?
Absolutely.
So just be. So it's like, yes, do during your ovulation and then be in your period. And if we can honor that cycle, that's how we can then truly learn how to do business in the feminine or really step into feminine leadership where both your masculine and feminine are integrated. And so I found that I did not burn out. For the last 9 months, I have not burned out. And yes, it was a huge push, but I feel more energized than ever. I feel super good. And I feel like I really kind of got that down, and gave myself permission and created that container for myself and just learning how to flow with my natural cycles as a woman.
So beautiful. And you really are that example to it. And I live by that too. It's like every new moon, my period comes, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go dance under the moon, play in the forest, have a bath, and I'm just gonna,
Mm-hmm.
because if you ever tried like pushing through that, I mean, it's just not fun. So it's like just go with the flow, and that is kind of the expression of the divine feminine. So that's so beautiful that you embody that and just practice that in all areas of your life.
Mm.
Um, so, well, what are some of your best self care um, tips that you do for yourself?
Yeah. So number one is just sleep. I love to read. So just getting in bed and reading a good book. Um, for me, especially during the pregnancy, was just about like lay down, relax, just let go of that there's anything to do. It's okay to sleep in. It's okay to go to bed early. The other thing that I kind of incorporate with my toddler is I take a bath with her.
Mm.
And I get in first. So I get a few minutes by myself. But just simply, I find that being in a bath for me, especially like an Epsom salt and bubble bath, and she likes the bubbles, and so I'll do an Epsom salt and bubble bath, and it's just something that's so cleansing about that, and how I can feel really riled up from like, dinner time and all that. And then I go in the bath, and it can literally just take 5-10 minutes. And even if she's in there, and she's so cute, she'll take water and she'll be like, "Mommy, lay down." And then she'll pour water on me. It's just so
Mm.
sweet. And I come out and I'm like, yeah, I feel totally renewed. So
Yeah. Well, I
those
mean,
are two big things for me. And then being out in nature as much as possible, like just even if it's, 10 minutes, just get outside.
absolutely. And I mean, if you think about water, it is the divine feminine. And then like being in the bath with her
Yes.
playing, it's just, that's joy. So that's like inner child.
Oh
So,
my God.
so of course it's going to shift everything. So I know this is, but like being a mom, would you say that brought you even more into the divine feminine?
Oh yeah. Oh yes. I mean, becoming a mother was such a rite of passage for me, such an initiation. And, part of this whole process that I went through with healing mother-father wound was in learning um, where I'm blocked around creating boundaries and getting my needs met, right? But the actual integration of how do I actually now, so I got to see where this is why, coming from my mother, coming from my father, this is why it's hard for me to set boundaries. This is why it's hard for me to get my needs met. Which I think are the two biggest things for women, right? Like we
Mm.
have a really hard time setting our boundaries with other people, and we have a really hard time identifying, asking for, and receiving what we need. So when I actually had a child, then that's when I got to really learn how to do that, because it became very clear to me that I needed to set boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
and my priorities, and I don't have as much time. So, just I can't do everything. And it allowed me to really focus in, because I used to give my time to everyone and, have all these things going on. And it's like, I just can't anymore. So really learn boundaries with that. And then getting my needs met, it's like, if I'm a working mother, running a business and with a toddler and pregnant, like I have a lot of needs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just really learned how to receive support in a major way. And
Do
I
you
do,
think
I
it's
feel,
like a primal survival thing?
no, because I see a lot of women struggle with this still when they come into motherhood. But I
Mm-hmm.
feel like because I did all this work and saw so much and cleared out a lot of what was blocking me, then it was just practice time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if you're not even present to that you have needs and that they need to be met, and that you can receive support, and you don't need to be a martyr mother, and you don't need to be superhero mother who does it all. I let go of all that going in, right? But so many
Mm-hmm.
women come in and they're in that energy, and so they're struggling. But for me, it was like I was present to all that was going on, cleared it all out, and then it was time to practice.
And so when you went through this journey of, really truly connecting with your divine feminine and living from that place, did you notice, like, did you have a lot of guy friends before that and then it tend to be more women, or just relationships shifted a lot in your life afterwards, or did the same people stay in your life and they just kind of shifted? What happened there?
No, I haven't had a lot of guy friends for a while. That was like when I was a kid, right? And so I'm mainly surrounded by women in my life.
Mm,
And I think a big struggle for me has been women who don't have kids understanding what it's like to be a mother and that everything has changed. And then my friends who are mothers who don't have a business have a hard time understanding what it's like to be like working and also raising a kid. So that's been I guess a struggle for me, is kind of finding my place, and like and as someone who was always in like large community settings, I've become, I think the biggest shift for me has really been refining and becoming more intimate with less women and being okay with that, because it was always like I have hundreds of women I'm connected to, right? But just like, okay, you know what? These are the women who are showing up, who are an energetic match for me right now, and so those are my go-tos. And so I didn't really have that before, whereas now that's what I've narrowed like who I'm cultivating in terms of like who's kind of in that inner circle for me.
absolutely. Yeah.
Because it was
So
more like I'm just friends with everyone, right? And it's like, well, I can't do that anymore.
and of course I can completely relate with, running my own business and having a
Yeah.
2-year-old, and our little girls, I think they're a couple of weeks apart.
Yeah.
And then, my little guys, I turned 5. So I totally get it. And it's amazing, we're talking about the gifts that they bring. It's like they bring their own abundance, but they bring gifts for, just us to step into. Really,
Oh, yeah.
when you look at even things that probably took us, like, well, for me, 2 days, and now it's like I've got an hour to do this, and so that's what I've got. So I'm going to make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
So as you say, we kind of tighten up ships everywhere we need to. So,
Oh, yeah.
thank you so much for sharing. I would love to just ask you a couple of just last few questions. What would you
Sure.
say as some of the most powerful ways for people to cultivate like abundance in their lives?
Oh, top 2 things that come to me is present to what you are receiving already and what you do have, right?
Mm,
And the other one is um, the biggest thing that's helped me to receive more is I have this trust that all my needs are provided for by the universe, and that's something I learned through the my process that I went through. My dark night of the soul, there were a couple moments that became really hairy, um, where I was just had no money in my bank account, and especially as I was self-publishing my book, like dumped everything into that, um, and so I don't ever have a worry anymore. Like I think some people get so caught up in the making it month to month, and like this fear, this underlying fear that it's somehow not gonna like show up. And
mm-hmm.
so I'm always in this trust of I don't ever worry about money anymore, because I know it's always going to show up even if we're tight for the month.
And
So
it
there's
does,
this,
and it does.
yeah. And so there's this deep trust that I've realized that like, and so I've opened myself up, and I love this mantra. I am open to receiving compensation, or I'm open to receiving money from known and unknown sources.
Love it. Love it.
And so that like those two go together of, yeah, so I've done the work to really trust that the universe is just going to provide, and always
Mm-hmm.
has. And I've never been left out dry. And yeah, I've gotten into hairy situations, but ever since that, like that's the last time that I was ever in that position,
Mm-hmm.
was during my book launch.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
so it's been 3 years, that I haven't ever worried about money. Just
That's
have it.
beautiful. That's beautiful. And you said you've done the work, but you've done the work spiritually, emotionally, physically. You've done it on
Yes.
all levels. So the universe will just keep providing. And so, what are some top tips? Just practices that you use on health to support with health and healing.
Um, hmm, hmm. I mean, so much of my health, I think, is because of the deeper emotional, energetic healing that I've done. And so I used to be very sick as a child. I've had a lot of injuries, and my body feels very vibrant. I feel very healthy. And I believe a lot of it is because of the clearing work that I've done of releasing so many limited beliefs, and a lot of them around that I'm weak. Like I'm weak. Like there was so much belief there that I'm weak, and it's like someone's got to take care of me and all this stuff. And so letting go of a lot of that, I would say, is number one. And then like what exercise feels best for my body at the given moment. So I'm not attached to it. And also like really allowing myself to rest, like I used to be someone who would just bust through, hard workout during my period. It's like, no, I don't do that anymore. I take a few days off,
Mm.
so not pushing my body too much.
So beautiful. And then I again, I just love, reading your newsletters, your posts and everything. And just like how honest you are when it comes to mothering, parenting. So what
Mm-hmm.
are your first couple of like beautiful golden nuggets you'd like to share with us?
Ooh, um, there's so many hover mothers who are ultra controlling. And so much of what I do is really creating space for my child to explore the world and to not try to hinder her um, in any way. And that's very difficult. But I try to get out of her way.
Mm.
And, right now, she was gone for 5 days. She's with Brent's mom, my husband's, my mother-in-law. 5 days. I mean, at 2 years old, I know a lot of women are like, I could not even imagine my 2-year-old leaving for 5 days. And I've really created such a support system that she's not just with me all the time. And so she trusts, she's able to be with other family members. And she's very independent and very confident in herself. Like there's a self-esteem there because I give her space and I get out of her way.
So beautiful, so
Mm-hmm.
gorgeous. And how myself and all the listeners could we support you in this moment? How can we support you?
um, hmm. I don't really know in this moment. I mean, I'm just kind of gearing up for this birth. So
We send you lots of good energy.
there you go.
But yeah, anything else?
A prayer, yeah, a prayer of I think a biggest fear for a mother bringing her second baby in the world is that it's going to be harder and she's not going to be able to manage it, and the first child is going to have trouble integrating the baby and all that. So I think just sending prayers and ease, like lots of
Mm-hmm.
grace and ease around that is the
Mm-hmm.
biggest thing. Yeah.
Well, it's so amazing because you've shared already. You have this incredible support system. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so gorgeous because your little girl already like has so many, your mom and Brent's mom that she
Yeah.
trusts, and so that in itself is just going to be worth so much,
Yeah.
and your connection with her. So, well, will I personally will all just send so much support for you because you've got like 2 weeks left. When's your due date?
2 weeks. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any last thing you'd like to share with us before we sign off?
Yeah. So if you are listening and you're interested in either joining one of our circles, or you're interested in learning more about becoming a facilitator, visit us at sistershipcircle.com. And we have a great free resource that is at sistershipcircle.com/ebook. And that is our How to Lead Circle guide. And it's 7 distinctions of how to lead circle that anyone who, whether you're leading circles or groups or it's really, really powerful. And I think it goes even beyond circle, because for me, circle is life. So it's really just about feminine leadership. So yeah, I recommend that for anyone who is interested in that.
Thank you so much. And you are just like magical and incredible and just like that embodiment of the divine feminine. So it's just been an honor, having you here today. And I would love to to everybody listening, I would love to just ask you all a question. And if you'd like to share with us in the comments, how do you cultivate the divine feminine within you? So we would love to hear from you. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Amanda.
Thanks, beloveds, for joining us today. Please come over to themandacons.com to continue the conversation and get access to all my podcasts, blogs, and videos. Did you enjoy this podcast? If so, please subscribe to the Amanda Cons podcast on iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. Feel free to pass this podcast on to your friends. That helps us get incredible guests to share their secrets for an inspired and joyful life. If you want more great resources, come over to amandacons.com and join my mailing list for all my latest content. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, I'm sending love